What prompted me to write The Art of Learning? I had to write the book, The Art of Learning, when I realized that a lot of learners that I had encountered with during my teaching years thought they had a brain type that was not so good. Or at least it just looked like they were blaming themselves for underperforming. And I needed to clear the air as to what was responsible and how to solve the issue. With so many books on learning, why is the art of learning necessary? Now, a lot of books on learning focus on one aspect of learning, and that's memory. They focus on teaching people how to recall things, how to recall a lot of things, develop their memory, and remember names, remember numbers, remember places very well for examination purposes. But the art of learning is all encompassing. So it covers this area of memorization, having an effective memory or having an improved memory. It does cover that. But then it goes on to cover 15 other learning skills that indirectly connect to memory, but make a learner to have a more robust learning experience that leads to effective learning and future workplace productivity. The first event that encouraged or made it clear that The Art of Learning is a very important and strategic book. I remember a story told by a friend of mine who happened to be teaching in a school, I think TYS, a preparatory school in Wusetu. It's owned by a Briton. According to him, she had given him an assignment, a task to do, being the principal of the school and he a teacher. And then he happened not to have done the assignment, but wanted to distract her so she doesn't ask for feedback. Then he eventually had The Art of Learning. He was holding a copy of The Art of Learning and decided to ask her, have you seen this book? And then she said, no, she hasn't. It has an interesting title. Let me see. She began to flip the pages according to him. And then she kept on saying, yeah, these are some of the things I've been talking to you guys about. These are some of the things I've been talking about. Good book. Where can we get copies? And eventually they ordered for 100 copies. Now, if you are a self-published author, 100 copy at a go is good news. So this was one of the turning moments for me. I felt like the whole world is looking for the art of learning at this point. Learning simply means transitioning from ignorance to knowledge and mastery. That's the most basic definition of learning. The unique thing about this new learning theory is that it takes away accidental and try and error ways of learning and focuses on just that straight journey from ignorance to knowledge and mastery. What is involved in that space? If one has to transition from a place of ignorance to knowledge and mastery, what are the behaviors involved? How can they do this with deliberateness or intentionality? That's what the intentional learning theory is about. What to do if you have to learn anything. So examination is not the true test of knowledge. The true test of knowledge is productivity. From results we have seen on the Till.ng platform so far, we've realized that any given two learners can be underperforming in class for very different reasons. One learner can be underperforming because they are weak in their knowing skills, and another learner may be underperforming because he or she is weak in recall skill or self-regulation skill, or even their application or processing skills. So you cannot just look at a learner who is underperforming and say to them, oh, you're not studying long enough, or you're not studying hard enough, or you should be studying at a particular time of day. No, you may not be accurate. That's something we've discovered. The current practice now of guidance and counseling has to do with guidance and counselors looking at these students, asking them some random questions, and then generalizing across board, saying to almost every other learner that comes to see them that if only they will study very hard or read their books longer, they would improve. That may not always be the case. And where this is the case, it may not be the only thing that they can do in order to improve. So the robust nature of the solution we have provided on the Till.ng platform allows learners and even guidance and counselors or learning consultants, in any case, to have some form of resource that helps them with particular information or helps to provide information with particularity as to what the exact issue is and what the solutions can be. This is a very important question. Can the art of learning help students perform better in examinations? Absolutely. And I know why this question is important. People don't just want to buy a book on learning and then eventually turn up with the same kind of performances that they've always had. No, they want to see or to get some form of assurance that they would improve. So absolutely, it will lead them to improve in their academic performance. They just need to practice the learning skills in specific or key learning behavior groups. For example, the learning behavior group on assimilation, that's the one on recall, and then self-regulation. These three will get the job done. Yeah, so why did I classify the learning skills in the art of learning in different groups? So I realized during the review of the book that many of the learning skills had certain functions in common in the way they contribute to the learner eventually making a successful transition from ignorance to knowledge and mastery. So for example, you have the first group that has to do with knowing. So we call that group knowing skills. Then there's a second group that contains processing skills. So if a learner is looking at improving in how they process information that they've acquired from the first group, they use the learning skills in the second group. Then there's a third group that contains learning skills for recalling information or recalling what they've previously learned or previous knowledge. So there's a fourth group that contains application skills, learning skills that helps the learners to put to use that which they've acquired, processed, and recall, to put them to use. Then we have a fifth learning group. I call that self-regulation skills. So there are 3 learning skills in this fifth group that helps a learner to regulate their behavior while acquisition of information is ongoing, or processing of information, recalling of information, or application of information is ongoing. How they manage their behavior when this is happening. And then there's a sixth group. Even though this sixth group does not contain learning skills, it has to do with the level of preparedness, mental, emotional, and physical adjustment of the learners to receive learning instructions. One of the most important turning points for the art of learning so far was when the federal government of my country or central government ordered for thousands of copies to distribute to 3 states. It was a massive one at that time for me. So it's not just about the number, it's about the fact that you've done your diligence on something and it is being asked for, it's being needed. People are finally seeing the value that your work is presenting. It was strategic for me. What explains the book's impact? A number of testimonials attest to the fact that, or lends credence to the fact that this is an invaluable work. But a particular story comes up to mind right now, and that would be the story of Ola. So I'm calling him Ola, not the real name anyway. So Ola happened to be a student in secondary school who was struggling with spellings and his mathematics. However, Ola encountered the principles I shared in the art of learning, read the book repeatedly, and he would eventually graduate first class from the university. How did Ola transition from someone who was struggling with his studies to now engage with intentionality in every teaching and learning situation and in his private study time is something that we are inviting every learner out there to discover by reading, getting a copy of The Art of Learning and reading it, discover it for themselves and reinvent themselves. From government's order also, we've had a number of testimonials. For example, some teachers in the schools that the government distributed those books to called and asked for their own personal copies. Some students also called and they were full of thanks, sending messages on social media. A lot of testimonials have come through. Nothing is as satisfying as seeing that the knowledge or the value we are presenting does not just work in terms of the sense it makes, but it works and makes them happier. The fact that it improves people's life is everything we could possibly ask for.